I'd like to call today's committee meeting to order and ask Ms. Parker to conduct a roll call, please.
Chair Warden,
Present.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Present.
Mr. George Archuleta,
Here.
Ms. Houston,
Present.
Pam Preza,
Here.
Rodney Walton,
Here.
and Daniel Smith.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Board Member Virginia Houston, will you provide the ethics awareness statement, please?
Will do. Welcome to the August 15th, 2022 meeting of the Elizabeth City Pasquotank Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of this board that it is our responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with General Statute 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is our duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage our personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board this evening? Let the record reflect that no conflicts exist.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Dr. Sheila Williams, George Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Preza. Yes. Rodney Walton,
Yes.
and Daniel.
Yes.
Okay, and at this time, I'm going to call on co-chair Rodney Walton to conduct today's agenda items for the Financial, Business, and Technology Committee. Take it away, Mr. Walton.
Thank you, Chair Warden. Next up, I would like to bring Ms. Rachel Haynes, the Assistant Superintendent for Finance.
Chair Warden and Co-Chair Walton, and board members, good evening. Finance has a couple of things on the agenda this evening. The first item is FBT 01. It's the purchasing report for July 2022. This is for information only. Are there any questions on the purchasing report? Okay, if there are no questions, the next few items are for action. Item FBT 02 is the schedule of tuition and fees. The student fees are required to be approved by the board and posted on our website by October 15th. Are there any questions on the schedule of fees?
Ms. Haynes, I got one question, and it may not be fee related to students, but earlier this year, the spring, I attended Battle of the Books, and I was thinking that if we could have T-shirts for the elementary schools individually to represent their schools at an event such as that. So I'm not sure if that's something we would actually charge the students or if that's something that we would, as a district, donate. But it's something that, I mean, obviously, you know, if we can talk about it further, I know it's not up here today, but something we can talk about further.
Okay, yes, sir. We can definitely explore that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We have done that in the past, and I believe it was,
And I think it's been done several different ways. I think there have been times when the schools sponsored their team and
right.
T-shirts so that they were all wearing the same T-shirt that was
Right.
provided by the school. But we can definitely explore whatever options you'd like for us to, Mr. Walton, seeking donations or such for Battle of the
Yeah,
Books T-shirt.
some media people use their book fair money for
Okay.
that. And then some schools pay for it out of their discretionary fund or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
All right, something we can talk about. Thank you.
Yep, yes, sir. Are there any other questions on fees? Okay, the next item is FBT 03, and it's a request that we've prepared to send to the county to increase the capital request by $490,897. And this is to cover 3 projects. So the first one is the cost increase in the paving projects in the amount of $197,000. And the other 2 are for major repairs of 2 of our HVAC systems that have had repeated service calls, Weeksville Elementary and Pasquotank Elementary. Ms. Wilkins has worked with DPI on those two projects. Both projects were bid through DPI, and the bid tabulations are also attached. And the funding for the HVAC repairs could possibly be paid using public school building repair and renovation funds. There's also attached in your packet a copy of the distribution form that would be completed in the event that lottery funds are used. So are there any questions on the funding for those three projects? And so I think also, oh, go ahead, Ms. Warden, I'm sorry.
When are you planning to put that request forward? As soon as we take action tonight?
Yes, ma'am, as soon as we, well, I guess we're going to put on consent agenda for the August 22nd meeting, and as soon as it's approved, we'll send it forward and request to be on their next board meeting, which is September the 12th.
Okay.
What we would like, though, is if we go ahead and approve these projects, we would like to get the projects approved as well, so we can go ahead and begin planning and moving forward with those repairs.
So tonight, we're taking action on approving the projects or approving the request for additional funding?
We'd like for you to do both. We'd like
Okay.
to approve that we can request additional funding and at the same time approve that we can move forward with those projects. So we
Okay.
have the money in capital that can cover it. We just need a project-specific designated
Okay.
by increasing our request.
All right.
And I think if the board would approve both the funding and the projects, that would be FBT 03 through 06.
Okay.
Ms. Haynes, is there any additional information about the cost increases for the pavement projects? Or is that was just a shortfall of what we estimated for the cost?
It's really just the cost increases of things in general. So when they first did the estimate for us, I think it was back in April. And so from April to now, it's the price of things have just increased.
Thank you.
And when do we anticipate it happening? The paving?
The paving projects, do you know, Ms. Wilkins will have to answer that. I don't know the timeline on the paving projects.
Good evening. Once they approve it, then it has to go before their, the same as with the county, they take it before their board, and I think Lauren said it was September the 12th. And once they approve it, then they'll proceed with the lease agreement.
So, but aren't we be in school, so the paving projects, would they have to be
It will
held?
be done during the break times, Christmas break, spring break, during the summer.
Okay, all right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or concerns about these items? So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion from the floor to take action on the tuition and fees schedule, as well as the additional funding for capital projects and the capital projects. That would be FBT 03 and FBT 06, correct?
It's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay.
Mr. Walton, do you have a question?
No, I was going to add that Ms. Wilkins was going to go next before we make that motion. Oh, is there any questions for Ms. Wilkins? I'm sorry. No, I'll make the motion. If there's no question, if there's no further question for Ms. Wilkins or Ms. Haynes, I'd like to make the motion that we approve FBT 02, FBT 03, FBT 04, FBT 05, and FBT 06. Those are tuition and fees, additional funding for capital projects, the NCDOT agreement, the Weeksville cooling tower replacement bid, and the Pasadena Elementary chiller replacement bid.
Second.
Did you get the motion and the second?
Yes, Ms. Virginia seconded.
Dr. Sheila Williams. George Archuleta.
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Pam Pereza.
Yes.
Rodney Walton.
Yes.
Daniel Smith.
Yes. And next we will have Ms. Wilkins to give the maintenance. Thank you, Ms. Haynes. I'm sorry. We have Ms. Wilkins to give the maintenance report. Thank you, Ms. Wilkins.
Good evening. Attached to your agenda, you have a copy of this month's maintenance monthly report. It's for information only. Do you have any questions?
Coming up.
Yes, sir. So we have, it was approved, with the athletic funding project. Isn't that what it was called, Miss Haynes? Yes. Right, correct.
Oh,
They give us
they'll be
estimated,
ready.
some of them will be, yes, because it will not be able to fund all the scoreboards, so we're going to prioritize them for the seasons as they come. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, with no further questions, Chair, do I need to make a motion to put this on the consent agenda for next week? Or have we already approved it for tonight?
We already approved it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wilkins. And that concludes the Committee for Finance, Business, and Technology.
Okay, with that, that ends the regular agenda. But before we go, I think, Mr. Archuleta, did you not have a question that you wanted to ask about transportation
Yes.
at this time? Okay.
Just want to know where we were on that, school being closed.
We've got a couple of things going on. We are excited that we're able to hire a couple of new drivers. Next, you might have to go up a little bit on my game. Hard to hear.
You want to-
Motion. So we do have a couple of new drivers that we're going to be recommending to the board, I believe tonight on the personnel agenda. So that's encouraging, very encouraging. And Ms. Hill is working on finalizing our routes right now. Some of those routes have already been finalized. For example, the early college, which began in session today. Myself and Dexter were over there this morning, and they had a terrific start to the school day, by the way. And they had 2 buses. Both of those buses ran on time. They were full, and everything worked great. So that's one thing that's encouraging. The elementary routes were finished last week, and the middle and high school are being finalized right now. And our goal is by having the opportunity for some of our elementary buses to arrive at 7 o'clock. That'll allow us to then send those buses on to make middle school runs 30 minutes earlier. And our goal is to be able to get every middle and high school student to school on time. But unfortunately, because of just the low numbers of drivers we have, it is going to be impossible for us to pick up our middle and high school kids at the end of school. So there will be some kids that are waiting 15 and 20 minutes at the end of the day to get home. And a part of that is we just do not have enough drivers to get all those buses there on time. But because the elementary schools are coming 30 minutes earlier, some of those buses, we'll be able to get kids to school on time in middle and high, but we can't dismiss elementary school early. So that means we won't be able to get some of those buses over earlier to the middle and high school. And if I had to compromise, I would rather have some kids maybe coming home a couple minutes later than coming to school late in the morning. So the morning being on time is the priority. So I think we've made progress. Certainly we've got a ways to go. We could be back to full operational capacity. Extra, you owe $5, and so do I. Both our phones went off at the same time. I don't hope it's not the same person calling us. So that our goal would be to get back to full operational capacity. It's going to take 15 to 20 drivers to do that. So we're moving in that direction, but I do feel very encouraged about where we are. And the final thing I would say to your first question, Mr. Archuleta, is we are going to have our routes available at our open house, which will take place on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. Parents will be able to get the route, bus number, and time there. Now, we are asking our parents to give us about a 15-minute before and after time just to help us out those first 2 weeks. So if your bus is scheduled to arrive at 7:20, We're asking you to be at the stop 15 minutes earlier, or know that that bus may come 15 minutes after 7:20 until we can just normalize those times for the first 2 weeks of school. But we'll have a route for every kid that's signed up by next week at open house. And then we're also going to have our schools begin to make phone calls to parents that kids are on the bus. Now, if you're just signing up for a bus, there's a likelihood we won't be able to route you by the start of school. Again, that's because of the lack of drivers. But what we're going to do is once we get the routes established, then Ms. Hill is going to take students that may be requesting a bus. She's going to begin to route them. So our message to parents who are just requesting bus service, we get to you as soon as we can. Our goal would be in the two weeks after school starts to be able to then get those kids on the bus. So was that kind of what you were looking for, Mr.
Yes,
Rosa?
and the main thing that if there's any delays or anything, parents are gonna be notified, like by the first of the year. If there isn't a ride form, we'll be notified, right, early enough.
Yes, if for some reason the bus couldn't run, which that would be a drastic emergency, then we would certainly notify. If the bus was going to be significantly late, we would notify. But I would say to parents, the first week of school, just anticipate that the bus could come 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late, and we wouldn't be specifically notifying you, but that's just the unpredictability of those first days and us trying to figure out exactly who's going to ride and what those routes look like. So we're asking our families to be patient with us those first couple of days and know that the bus time could fluctuate. Our goal is by the end of the first week, going into the second week, we've got more of a consistent time for those buses to arrive. Yes, sir. Any other questions?
That info that you just said that you're asking that the parents be a little patient. Is that memo going to be sent out to the parents to let them know that that could be? How is that going to go out? Is that only going out during the open house, or will ECPPS send a memo out maybe in Parent Square?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're going to have information going out at our open houses, and then I'm preparing a message that will go out to every parent that's going to list just kind of several open of school type things. And one of those particular pieces will be some updates on bus routes. One of the things we are going to do specifically is if an elementary bus has been determined to come 30 minutes earlier and arrive at 7, we're going to notify the parents of that bus specifically to let them know the bus time. Now, Ms. Hill has told me that we won't have any earlier routes than we had last year. So there were some early routes, and a part of that is just elementary starts earlier. And then the buses have to run earlier because we have less drivers. And I think we don't have any times that would be earlier than what we had last year. So we're not asking some parents to be earlier, but some kids will just arrive at elementary school 30 minutes earlier. And instead of getting to school at 7:20, some of them will get to school at 7. And then we'll go ahead and take them off the buses, and we'll have teachers available to do math intervention for students in the cafeteria or the place. So we'll go ahead and feed those kids breakfast. Majority of our elementary kids are going to continue to get to school about the same time that they do.
And then those teachers that you have arriving early, is that choice, or how are those teachers selected? And since they're early, are we compensating them for that?
Yes, so that is going to be completely optional for them to sign up. We have applied and have received, we're waiting for official confirmation, but we essentially have received a grant that will help us pay for that. It's from the federal government. And so we'll be able to reimburse teachers for coming early, and it's completely voluntary. And so our principals are working with Mr. Fudge and Mr. Fommel right now, because we'll be able to do that in our middle schools as well. And they are working to ask teachers who would like to do that. We're asking them to sign up on a quarterly basis. And then if the teacher would want to continue, they're more than welcome to opt in. But if the teacher would say, you know what, I would be glad to do a quarter, they could do 1 quarter, and then we could ask another teacher to come in for second quarter. So we certainly will be able to compensate teachers, and then that'll be a way for kids to get to school earlier. We can use that bus, but then also when the kid is there, they're also getting some math education. So this grant has really been very helpful for us, not just from the academic part, but also for us being able to then send those buses out on additional routes to try to pick up kids. So when you're down as many drivers as we are, the only way you can make it work is for some kids to come earlier, and then you do more runs with the same number of drivers. And so that has really helped us be able to get in that point. So I feel optimistic about where we are for start of school for transportation. Now we have a ways to go. There's no doubt about that, but I do feel optimistic and we're undoubtedly going to run into routing issues and we're going to have to address things and we're going to move right on it. But I do feel good about where we are now.
I think you probably answered this when you were giving your report, but I know in the past, we've had parents who drop their children off because of work schedules and the whole bit. So the children being able to enter the building at 7 at elementary level applies to any child who is arriving, or is it just for the children arriving on the bus?
That's a good question. So if we have the capacity to serve the kids, they all can come. But if we were to run into a scenario where, I don't foresee this happening, but say 80% of the school came, then we may not be able to fund enough teachers to adequately supervise those kids with the grant we have. In that particular case, we would want to specifically invite students that would have a high academic need for intervention, and they would get the priority for the drop-off, and then we would go in that route. But I don't necessarily foresee that being an issue, and as long as we can fund enough teachers to make sure we've supervised the kids, they are more than welcome to get dropped off as long as we have the space.
It's not usually that many, but we have had cases where some children were dropped off because of parent work schedules, so.
That's right. And I did have a family communicated that for our families that may work in Virginia, sometimes it's beneficial for them to be able to drop their children off earlier because they have a longer drive.
Exactly.
So in this case, this is actually could benefit those families by us opening the school doors 30 minutes earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Is this option going to be at every elementary school and both middle schools?
It will be.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Are there any other questions or concerns? Okay. Then I am going to call on Dr. Williams to take us into closed session.
A motion for the board to go into closed session as allowed by NC General Statute 143 through 318-11A6 for the purpose of considering one or more personnel matters that are confidential under NC General Statute 115C through 320, and as allowed by NC Statute 143 through 318-11A3 to consult with the board attorney regarding matters protected by the attorney-client privilege and to preserve that privilege. The board will resume open session live stream following closed session.
Dr. Sheila Williams, George Archuleta, Virginia Houston,
Yes.
Pam Pereza, Rodney Walton,
Yes.
and Mr. Spence. Spence.
Yes.